Hi everybody, welcome to Dulcimerica. My name is Bing Futch. Thank you for joining me. We're going to wrap up our recent study on cadences this week. Last week we had a melodic cadence, a longer melody, and I showed you how I ended each phrase in a particular cadence to stretch things out. This week I'm going to harmonize that melody and then we'll wrap it up for now. The one thing I want to point out here is that I'm not doing cadences in the chords. I'm not doing a chord and a chord close together, but we are ending in chords that are part of cadences, and they're going to have the same effect as we did pairing those chords together. So you'll see how I do that. But also, I'm going to take us out of the diatonic world and do some chromatic stuff towards the end to show you what the possibilities are when we are harmonizing a melody. So what are we doing when we're harmonizing a melody? We've got the individual note, just that single melody by itself, and we are basically adding another two parts to it, because every chord has three notes: a root, a third, and a fifth. At least the basic chord, a triad, has those three elements. We already have the melody, and you may not know this, but one of the unwritten rules of songwriting and arranging is your melody, if you're playing in a chord melody style, your melody needs to be the highest pitched note in the chord so it's easier to be heard. So if we think of our melody as the fifth, then we're looking for a harmony that's the third, something that's close by in pitch, you know, how high or how low that melody is. Something close by it that'll be a nice, suitable harmony. Then once we get the harmony for that melody, we just need a low note to support the whole thing, and usually, but not always, it's going to be the name of the chord. So if we've got a melody going over an A major chord, then we're typically going to want to have that lower note as an A, and then that's going to cement everything together. So we have the three parts of our chord. The melody is one part, harmony is another part, and then the support, the root of the chord, is the third part altogether. So let me go ahead and walk through and show you what I've done here with everything. And you can download this tablature right down below on the screen, and that will allow you to play along if you so desire. This doesn't have a name, by the way. I'm just kind of messing around. So we'll go here. Our first chord is A. All right, that's the harmony. So let's go ahead and walk back through and see what I've got going on here. We're starting off with A major, and so the melody notes are coming out largely out of our tones, our chord tones, which are A, C sharp, and E. But there's a couple of other notes in there, some passing tones. So following along with the melody from last week, if you've still got that download handy, what we've done here is we've stacked our A major chord. We already had our melody note, which was going to work really well for that. But now we got a full-fledged A major to kick us off from the beginning. And then we end up on that note, that B right there. And so cadence-wise, that left us in a position where we weren't quite home yet. We were stretching things out. And so I decided to marry that B together with an E major. That's the 5 chord, E, G sharp, and B. So just by nature of it being the 5 chord and us being at the end of a phrase, what does that give us? Well, it's a half cadence. A 5-1 cadence, that's going to take us home. That's an authentic cadence, and that's a great way to set us up for another run outwards. So watch this. I'm going to play and we'll get our question. That's the question, the musical question. It's asking, it's leaving it wide open for the answer. We don't want to end right there because people are going to be waiting for that other shoe to drop. So we're going to hang on the E. That's going to make that tension really, really dig in. Remember, we're playing keep away with the 1 chord. So the longer we can stretch that out, the more payoff it gets when we resolve back to the 1. So we're staying with E, And I'm playing around with some melody here. And then we have a resolution that comes to A, and that sounds very, very satisfying, that 5-1, right? But then what do I turn around and do? I take us right back to E major, so that's going to be our 5 chord. That is once again going to leave us in a half cadence. I'm prolonging and prolonging that return home, that satisfaction, and doing it, and that's the same thing we had last week. I was just postponing and postponing everything. So here we are back at 5, but then very quickly, the next phrase takes us back to 1. We have a little A7 chord in there. That's a dominant 7 chord. It adds even more musical tension and sounds great when we go to the 4 chord. So you might want to make a note of that. Your 1 chord, if you follow it up with a dominant 7th on the same chord and then go to your 4 chord, it's awesome. Also, a dominant 7th on the 5 chord going home to the 1 is similarly awesome. So we have this nice A7, then we continue on from the A7 chord, and then we have a 4 chord. So now we've got the 4 chord, and where is the 4 chord going to go? We are going to do something crazy with the 4 chord, and we are going to first of all turn it into a minor 4 chord. So that's not diatonic. Why? Well, diatonic means within the key, and in the key of A major we've got F sharp. There is no F natural. It's a note that doesn't belong in the key. Or we can call that a borrowed note, or a chord based off of that would be a borrowed chord from another key. And it works out great. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to make it a D minor. So D to D minor would sound like this. And by itself, it sounds great. You want to break somebody's heart? Man, 1, 4, minor 4 is one of the best ways to do it. So here's our A. And our 4 chord to minor 4. Doesn't that sound great? You've heard it in a billion tunes before, and now I'm just putting it here. But let's take it to the next level. We're also going to make this a D minor 6 chord. So you'll need the 1.5 fret for this in order to pull off the D minor 6, or rather the D minor. You do need to have that 1.5 fret to make that happen. So what I'm going to be doing is I'll be adding the note B, and that is going to take us where we need to go. So watch this. The 4, 3, 2, D. And then, doesn't that sound great? Oh, I love a D minor 6. And we can pull it off in the key of A. And I purposely picked this key because in this key you can get, with the extra frets, the minor 4. So that's the whole reason, just to deliver that cool thing happening there at measure 13. So coming from, what's that, measure 11? Measure 10 more like. Really nice. And now we move on. E, 2, 4, 4th fret, E, the 5 chord to A, the 1 chord, and just the same as it was last week, here it is in authentic cadence, and that wraps up at least one pass through this piece. As I mentioned, this is something that I plan on actually working with, so you will probably see this melody pop up in one of our future episodes down the road. But there is the harmonized melody that we have begun last week. Hope you had a good time studying cadences. I hope you are working with them in your day-to-day. You don't have to know them, you don't have to use them, but you can certainly use them to write better songs, longer songs, and more complex works if you're looking to do that. Thank you very, very much for joining me. What's coming up next week? Probably a breather as we take you back in time slightly to October and the Carolina Balloon Fest. I'll show you some of what was going on there. And then we'll jump right into some new studies leading us into the new year. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and we will see you next time.